podcast, another live show. We're getting him in this week. We had a great conversation yesterday, and we're going to have another fantastic, though difficult, but incredibly necessary conversation today with Judd Saul from Equipping the Persecuted about a silent massacre and slaughter of Christians in Nigeria, arguably one of the most deadly and dangerous nations for Christians to live in the world right now. So we're going to play our opener, and we'll be back here in just a couple minutes. Please join, like, share, tell your friends, and tune in.
Welcome to the Center for Baptist Leadership podcast, hosted by William Wolfe. Our mission is to cultivate courageous and biblical Baptist leadership for the 21st century. We aim to revitalize the Southern Baptist Convention from within, defend it from those who seek its destruction, and serve as a better Baptist voice in the public square.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Center for Baptist Leadership podcast, a live stream edition. I'm your host, William Wolfe, and I'm joined today by Judd Saul from Equipping the Persecuted. Equipping the Persecuted focuses on providing care, aid, and resources to persecuted Christians in Nigeria. They've been doing that for over 6 years, and it's all they do. So Judd is an expert on this topic. But before we dive into this today, I just wanted to give a very brief opening remark about why this is so important. As somebody who worked at the State Department in the first Trump administration, I had a front row seat to the way that our foreign policy apparatus operates. But even outside of that time, you can look over the last many decades of American foreign policy and see that we have had a terrible track record, largely in caring for persecuted Christian communities abroad, while at the same time, instead, we have focused on exporting all kinds of evils and LGBT nonsense and transgenderism nonsense around the globe in places where it's not interested, or where people are not interested in it, where it's not wanted at all. Under this Trump administration, I think we've seen a real change in American foreign policy. And part of that is us becoming a global champion for persecuted Christians. That doesn't always mean boots on the ground, though we could have a good conversation about bringing back gunboat diplomacy if needed to deal with some of these terrorist groups. But there's a lot of aid, and there's other things that we can provide and should be doing. And we have some champions in Congress in particular, including Representative Riley Moore from West Virginia, who's been pushing this issue on Nigeria with a great announcement today that we'll get into in just a second. So hopefully what we're seeing from this Trump administration in terms of being a global champion for persecuted Christians will come to bear in Nigeria and other countries as well. So, Judd, thank you so much for joining us today. Glad to have you on.
Hey, William, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So, Judd, why don't you go? I give you a very brief intro, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, why you started this, and what you're doing? It's such a hot topic. So glad to have you on today.
So I'll give everybody a quick background. I had my come back to Jesus moment in 2009. I grew up in a Baptist church, grew up in a Christian home, saw a lot of church drama happen, kind of left the church and said, that's for them. That's for their thing. I'm just going to go on my own and do my own thing. And that's not what God had in mind for me. And I finally came to my senses, repented, got on my knees and said, Lord, I'm sorry for falling away. Do with me what you will. Now, the problem is when you tell the Lord and say, Lord, do with me what you will, he'll take you in places that you never quite imagined, and where you'd end up going. So in 2011, my grandfather, who's just a lay evangelist, loved sharing the gospel, was working with a mission in Nigeria. And I felt that I could help the mission out by getting word out about what they're doing. I come from a film video production background, and it was there that I went that my faith changed, my outlook on Christianity changed. I fell in love with the Nigerian people, and I saw people that had nothing. I mean, nothing, but showing up to church on a Sunday morning, wearing their Sunday best, praising God and giving God their all. And that changed my faith, and my whole scope of Christianity changed. And I saw what I believe is a real, genuine faith. And I fell in love, and I kept on going back to Nigeria and serving every year and helping out with the mission. But what happened is over the years, we saw attacks against the Christians increase exponentially. And when I mean attacks, I'm not talking like beat up. I'm talking killing of Christians. And the killing of Christians, the amount of Christians that are being killed every year just started skyrocketing. And I saw very few people doing something on the ground about it. And I said, what if we came up with a mission that works on not just humanitarian aid, and we do share the gospel at every act we do, but somebody that's working to defend persecuted Christians and trying to stop the persecution and stop the killing. And so we created Equipping the Persecuted in 2019. And for the last 6 years, we've been a boots on the ground mission, helping our persecuted brothers and sisters, whether it's humanitarian aid or working with village security teams to protect their villages.
That's a fascinating story, Judd. And you're right. When we tell the Lord, here I am, send me, we don't always know where he's going to send us. That's for sure. But it sounds like the Lord has providentially used you to be quite a blessing to the Nigerian people. So why don't you give us a rundown on the situation there? I think slowly but surely people are becoming aware that there's essentially a slaughter, an ongoing slaughter of Christians in Nigeria, breaking through what's essentially been a mainstream media blackout because they don't want to talk about it because they don't care about Christians. So why don't you give us sort of the background and the players?
Okay, so over the course since 2001, that was actually 9/11, 2001 was a start of a launch point of a jihad that was attempted over 100 years ago in Nigeria by the Fulani Muslims. They're a nomadic Islamic tribe, not indigenous to Nigeria, that are coming from the north. They're coming from Chad, Niger, from the Sahel region. And they have been populating and moving into the countries, from the north. And what they do is over time, they gain a population, political control, and then they start killing for more territory and Islamize the territory. Given them the permission to do this wherever they say, whose land that is. And so what you're seeing before your eyes is they moved in, populated, blended in with the society around them, and then started killing and taking over in the middle belt. And that's what is clashing.
Judd has dropped. I don't know if you guys were watching that. He was getting a little glitchy for me. I trust I'm still streaming here. So I'm just going to see if we can get Judd back in and keep taking a run at this. If we have to take it offline, I'll record the episode with him and we'll get it up next week. He's actually going back to country next week, which is why I wanted to get this done with him today. So let me check with Judd here, and everybody hang tight for a second. Well, while we are waiting for Judd to come back in, and hopefully we can continue this. But again, if not, I might just take it offline. We'll record it locally and we'll post it next week. Let me try to get him the link here again. Technical difficulties. Okay, guys, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make an executive decision to pull down the live stream. I'm going to record it locally with Judd, and then hopefully we can get it up next week. We'll catch him before he's out of the country, and we'll have a wonderfully, beautifully produced, no glitches podcast for you guys. This is such an important issue. One of the things we didn't mention was that just today, right before we got on this, President Donald Trump did say that they're going to make Nigeria a country of particular concern. That's a designation. It's a very important one under the International Religious Freedom Act that highlights them as, a bad actor with terrible religious liberties and freedom issues there, opens them up to sanctions and other things like that. So let's see. Here's Judd. We'll give him we'll give this one more try here. Oh, he has Riverside open in other tabs. Hey, Judd.
There we go.
It's saying that you have Riverside open in other tabs, although I don't know if that's an issue. So, Judd, here's what we're going to do. As I was talking to the audience in your absence, let's give this one more try on the live stream. And if it's not clicking, we'll just pull it down. We'll record it locally. I know you're about to head out, but we'll get it done and we'll put it up, produced.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and try going live again. Don't know what
we're still live. Oh, we're still live, man. Rocking and rolling.
All right, here we go.
Okay. You sound better. You look better now. So hopefully it holds. So I actually didn't hear much at all of what you were saying, because you were telling me about the Fulani herdsmen moving in, but why don't you start there and kind of walk us back through that?
So what you have are the Fulani tribe. They come from the Sahel. They are radical Islamist tribe. Many of them come from like a Wahhabi radical form of Islam, which comes out of Saudi Arabia. In fact, Middle Eastern leaders, especially from Saudi Arabia, actually will fly Fulani leaders into Mecca to go visit, and they do get some training there. But what's going on is you're seeing a real life Muslim jihad take place, where they come in culturally. They'll live with the neighbors for like 30 years and blend in. And then when they start gaining a population and political control, then the killing starts. And they've worked their way in from northern Nigeria, taking over states and decimating Christian communities, not by one giant attack where like what you're seeing in Sudan right now, where they go take over a whole city. They're just going and coming in by death by 1,000 attacks, 20 here, 100 here, taking over this village here, then going in, a few months later, we're going to go get this village, little by little. And by all of a sudden, they have a giant population, and they start pushing out everybody that doesn't agree with them, convert to Islam, or they're put under jizya. They're treating anybody that's not their radical form of Islam like second-class citizens, especially the Christians. And they're just working their way south, killing indiscriminately.
And what's the Nigerian government doing about it?
Well, the Nigerian government's been infiltrated by the Fulani over the last 15 years. The last Nigerian Muslim president was a Fulani himself. And then this presidential term with Tinubu, you have a Muslim president and a Muslim vice president. And they are turning a blind eye, if not being complicit in the killings of Christians.
That is fascinating and heartbreaking. I looked into the Nigerian constitution recently, and it's ostensibly a secular state, but it sounds like for all intents and purposes, now it's a Muslim state.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct. It's 50% Christian, 50% Muslim. It used to be 70% Christian, 30% Muslim. Now it's 50-50.
And why, if the population is still sort of split like that, are Christian reform movements or Christian government coalitions or parties unable to gain control and then use government power to protect these persecuted Christians?
Unfortunately, there are some good politicians, but the vast majority are just solely corrupt. They're not
okay.
They may be Christian in name only, but they're really not out for protecting their own people. They're out for their own pocketbook. Nigeria is a corrupt country from top to bottom. Like I said, there's very few good politicians there. And, and then we have a lot of Christian leaders that are complicit by saying that there's not a problem. You have Christian leaders being paid off by the government and in other areas that are being paid off to say that this isn't happening. There's no genocide. When if you just go to the areas where there's genocide, it's obviously a genocide.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of the numbers that I'm seeing, at least from when Riley Moore wrote to the Secretary of State, Congressman Moore, urging Secretary Rubio to designate Nigeria a country of particular concern. This was October 6, 2025. In his letter, he argued that over 7,000 Christians have been killed in Nigeria in 2025 alone, an average of 35 per day. I've seen some reports that we're looking at, maybe 35,000 at least over the last decade or so, if not more. I mean, where are you putting those numbers?
More.
Yeah. Okay. So give us your numbers.
More. So I'll just say since 2001, it has been well over 100,000 Christians killed. The last, I can tell you, so this year, 7,000, the 3 years prior was right around 5,000 Christians or more killed per year. I mean, so the number is way more than 50,000. It's well over 100,000. But what people don't talk about is that's the immediate killing. Those are people that were killed right on the spot. They're not talking about the nearly 1 million Christians that have died of malnutrition and disease because their homes and everything they had were completely destroyed. So no one's talking about the survivors of these attacks. So as we talk right now, there's 3.5 million Christians living in camps that have been removed from their homes, that have not been able to return to their ancestral lands.
Wow. And those lands are being controlled by the Fulani right now.
Those lands are being fully controlled by the Fulani, and if they go back, they get killed.
And so what do you guys, I mean, this is, it's a total disaster, right? I mean, do you agree with the label that it's possibly the deadliest country for Christians in the world right now, or at least one of them?
Yes. Well, it is by sheer number. And if you are in the Middle Belt and you're going to church on a Sunday, there is a chance that your church, your village is going to get attacked at any given moment. If you're a pastor in the Middle Belt of Nigeria, and you're not in the big city of Jos, or you're not in the big city of Kaduna, and you're out in the rural areas, you have a target on your back. And these pastors are risking their lives to go to church on Sundays and keep the church going, to be a shining light in their communities. And they are willing to die for their faith, and they are not giving up, and they're not running away.
Well, praise God for that testimony. So, Judd, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you guys are doing? Because what you're doing is definitely different than from what a lot of humanitarian aid or even Christian relief organizations do. You have a big team on the ground there, And like you said, you're helping, it sounds like essentially arm train and equip
Well,
Nigerian Christians. Or so tell us what you're doing there.
I got to be careful. We can't
Sure.
arm. We can't get in the arms business. If we do, I go to jail in Nigeria and won't be operate as a mission. But what we can do, and legally within the bounds, is train and work with village security teams. So these are men and women that come up from their own community. They're not paid by the government. They're recognized to essentially be be security for their towns, but they don't get arms. They get no funding whatsoever. So we've took it upon ourselves in our ministry and found a great ministry opportunity to work with village security teams, give them, help buy boots, bulletproof vests, radios, and training on how to save as many lives as possible. Like how do you notice things? How do you gather intel? Things that in the US we kind of take for granted. I mean, does your church have a church security team?
My church is actually working on that right now.
Right. So there's a lot of churches all across America that have church security teams. This was a foreign concept in Nigeria. And this is just one of the ways we're working with churches. We're encouraging church security teams, have somebody on the lookout, because churches, unfortunately, the terrorists like to attack churches on Sundays. And so they need to be on the lookout. But it's also just practical knowledge that we bring to village security teams. And also we install, when we have the funds, we install village alarm systems. If a tornado is coming through your town, there's a siren, somebody's going to hit and bad weather's coming. There's a siren that'll go off. Well, installing a village alarm system has helped and saved a lot of lives. And that's some of the other work we do. And then we do the humanitarian aid. We respond to attacks within 48 hours. After the killing, you have a lot of wounded and you people that have nothing but the clothes on their backs. So they need food, they need medicine, they need shelter, they need something to sleep on. And with the resources we have, we try to respond to those attacks within 48 hours and render aid to these people, and even pay the medical costs of the wounded that haven't been treated.
Wow. Well, praise God for that. Thank you for your work, brother. Is there anybody else doing what you're doing out there? Do you see other organizations on the ground helping?
Not like we are. You'll have some organizations they'll come in occasionally and bring food. Occasionally they'll do some medical work, but no one's working with village security teams. No one's working on preventative measures. And one of the other things we've been doing, we can bring up, show you later, is I created a website called truthnigeria.com.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and pull it up right now.
Yeah. So we're giving local journalists, we have 20 local journalists that are documenting and reporting what is going on a daily basis. So if you go over to the right, you see, truthnigeria.com.
Okay. So folks, if you're listening, make sure to visit truthnigeria.com for on the ground reporting of what's happening right now.
Yeah. Up to date information. And unlike other journalists, and especially mainstream media, we actually investigate. When there's an attack, we ask the questions: who attacked you? Where did they come from? How many were there? And we are actually getting accurate numbers onto how many were actually killed, how many churches were destroyed. And we're getting the real numbers from testimony on the ground, not just somebody sitting in some office, in Abuja or another town who's not actually going to these areas. We send our guys in to get the facts, and that's what we report.
Yeah, this is a really great looking website here. I mean, there's so many headlines that jump off right away. It looks like you also provide security alerts as well.
And I'll go into the terror alert. So we've provided over 100 terror alerts since the start of 2024, and 89% accuracy. We're not able to get all the attacks, but we are 89% accurate on our terror alerts. And when a terror alert goes out, the government's notified, the local villages are notified. Unfortunately, the majority of the time, the government does nothing when they get the alerts, but at least we're able to alert local villages so they can take action.
So I assume, is this being translated into the local language as well? Do people in Nigeria use this?
Yeah, we have a whole network. When a terror alert goes out and it goes to the community, that information gets disseminated as soon as the alert goes out. And people are contacted through WhatsApp chats and threads. People are getting phone calls. They're being notified about what's going on. And just because of our terror alerts alone, we've been able to save thousands and thousands of lives because of advance notice, because they were able to either thwart off an attack, evacuate, and take action.
That's amazing, Judd. Thank you for your work here. So let's go ahead and look at the announcement from Donald Trump today and just get you to react to this, because I assume that this is something that you're thankful to see. I mean, Representative Moore has really been pushing this issue, and there are other congressmen, senators who have as well, but he's been one of the guys I would say I've seen. I'm not saying others haven't, but I've seen him leading on it and just sort of, flogging this issue and trying to get it to break through. So I'm going to pull up his post here on X today, where he says, "Thank you, POTUS, for your incredible leadership by designating Nigeria as a country of particular concern. You have always been a champion for Christians around the world, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with you and Chairman Cole," that's Tom Cole from Oklahoma, on the House Appropriations, to defend our brothers and sisters in Christ who are being slaughtered by radical Islamists in Nigeria. And then we have the Trump Truth Social post, and I'll go ahead and read this too for the people who listen, I guess, offline, because we will turn this into an audio podcast as well. Donald Trump posted today, being October 31st, Reformation Day, on Truth Social, that he says, "Christianity is facing an existential threat in Nigeria. Thousands of Christians are being killed. Radical Islamists are responsible for this mass slaughter. I'm hereby making Nigeria a country of particular concern, but that is the least of it. When Christians or any such group is slaughtered like is happening in Nigeria, 3,100 versus 4,476 worldwide." So he's, I guess, comparing the Nigerian specific totals to what's going on in the world total right now. "Something must be done. I'm asking Congressman Riley Moore, together with Chairman Tom Cole and the House Appropriations Committee, to immediately look into this matter and report back to me. The United States cannot stand by while such atrocities are happening in Nigeria and numerous other countries. We stand ready, willing, and able to save our great Christian population around the world." So, Judd, what's your reaction to this? I mean, this is what you work on day in and day out.
Thank you, President Trump. Thank you, President Trump, for doing this. We have been working on this since we started as a mission. We've been working in DC. I've been going to DC like every 3 months, every quarter, talking to congressmen, talking to people in the State Department about Nigeria. And finally, since Trump has got back into office, he's taking action. And we've been looking at this a long time. Now, this is it's a big step forward. This isn't going to stop the killing, but what this does, it puts the ball in the Nigerian court, saying, you guys better get your act together, or else we're going to put sanctions in. You are going to lose money, international money. And so my question is to the Nigerian government is, do you love your local terrorists more than you love international money? The ball's in your court to decide. And it's time for the Nigerian government to protect its own citizens. And so this is a major step in the right direction. And I'm thankful for President Trump for doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thankful for it too, but the devil's always in the details. What are the leverage points here? We can sanction them. I don't know what Nigeria's major exports are that we could target. How much will the Nigerian government care? And if they're radical Islamists, will they not care at all? So what do you anticipate the response to be here?
If the CPC, country particular concern, is followed up with sanctions, not just sanctions against the Nigerian government, but sanctions against the politicians, sanctions against the terror leaders in Nigeria. Now you're hurting their bank accounts. Now you're hurting the Nigerian government. So the biggest export of Nigeria is oil. If we quit buying oil from Nigeria and we hurt them on the international market with oil, that is going to hurt the Nigerian government in big ways. And so if we follow up the CPC with sanctions and put some teeth into this thing, I have hope, but it'll show the world. Does the Nigerian government love its terrorists more than they love the innocent people being killed? Or do they love the Nigerian terrorists more than they love getting international money? The ball's in their court.
Yeah. Well, this is a really interesting conversation about Islam in general here, right? Because we can use the word terrorist, and yes, they are terrorists, but committed jihadists in many ways are just faithful Muslims. I saw a post the other day where it said, when Christians are bad neighbors, people are disappointed. When Muslims are bad neighbors, people are relieved. When they're
Yes.
not following what the religion actually teaches. And so,
Yes.
do you think that the Muslim leadership in the Nigerian government, are they committed, jihadist Muslims, or are they, sort of moderate Muslims who will respond to pressure like this, sanctions, visa cancellations, things like that? Or is this ultimately going to have to sort of be resolved by a Nigerian civil war or something like that?
It's up to President Tinubu to make that choice. And if they don't start taking the necessary steps to protect Christians and their own citizens, this will lead to civil war, and that is what we don't want, because the killing is going to go from thousands to the millions if this is not dealt with soon. Right now, the middle belt of Nigeria is at a boiling point. And if intervention, it does not happen soon, it's going to get a lot bloodier. And that's the last thing I want to see. The last thing we want to see is millions of lives dead and millions of Christians being killed. For what? So it's up to the Nigerian government to step up to the plate now and take leadership and defend its citizens. And thank God we have a president now in the United States that's calling it out for what it is. Because this is a little history here, William, is that when Trump first got elected to office, his first term, he designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern. We saw killings go down. As soon as Biden took office, he took Nigeria off the country of particular concern list, and we saw killings escalate, skyrocket. And the operating directive from the U.S. government to the embassies in Abuja was LGBTQ issues, promoting feminism, promoting God knows what, other than actually looking at human rights violations that were being committed in Nigeria. And the Democrats have been vehemently against designating Nigeria as a country of particular concern, because Muslim Nigerian money and lobbyists are in the United States working with leftist lobbyists to keep the money flowing and to help get Muslims elected in Nigeria.
Wow.
So I just want to point this out politically here. You'll find this interesting. David Axelrod and the Democrats have been in Nigeria the last 3 presidential cycles trying to get Muslims elected to office to defeat Christian candidates.
Of course they have.
Do you know who the U.S. sent to oversee the last Nigerian presidential elections?
Bo Biden.
Stacey Abrams.
Wow.
They sent Stacey Abrams to go oversee Nigerian elections to make sure they were.
Judd just glitched out on me again. A quick record correction. I obviously meant Hunter Biden. But let's see if Judd comes back. We were doing so good there. Let me just check with him real quick. Well, while we're waiting for Judd, again, this is a very serious matter. Obviously, the political connections with the left in America and the international community. Oh, there we go. He's moving again. Judd, are you back?
I'm back.
Okay, you're back. Yeah, I don't mean to make light of it at all, but it is almost a tragic farce, that these privileged elite leftists in America who hate God and hate our country and hate Christians wherever you can find them, whether that's in America or Nigeria or Armenia or wherever else around the globe, who preach things like social justice, are working with radical, violent, terrorist Islamists in Nigeria to make sure that Christians stay out of power, while at the same time, tens of thousands of Christians are being slaughtered and millions of Christians are being displaced. It's almost just one of those things where if you don't laugh at the absurdity of it. You cry at the despair of the situation. Judd, can you hear me? I can't hear Judd. And he's gone. We're trying, folks. We're getting through it. Well, hopefully we can clean this up and re-release it. This is what happens when you do the live streaming some. But I'm really thankful for Judd coming on here and drawing attention to this. We cannot overstate enough how much the mainstream media, the left, the Democrats, the international community hates Christians. They hate Christians. This is what we are up against. They are willing to turn a blind eye to the arguably the most intense and violent slaughter of our Christian brothers and sisters in the faith around the world right now, happening in Nigeria, because they cannot bring themselves to acknowledge the truth of what Islam is and what jihadists want to do. One of the greatest lies of the 20th century, and ironically, even a post 9/11 global order, is that most Muslims are peaceful and that it's okay to go ahead and welcome them in and let them, take over entire towns and cities in America, to let them have their way around the globe, to welcome millions of Islamic migrants into Europe and expect them to assimilate and to not follow their religion. As Judd was laying out there earlier on in the show, I just couldn't help but note the similarities to some of the things we're seeing in Europe and America right now, where he said the Fulani herdsmen would come in, not violently at first, but they would ingratiate themselves into local populations. They would gain control. They would solidify power. They would grow their presence in their population. And then they would start purging the Christians. And so we would just be foolish to think that this couldn't happen in the UK or this couldn't happen in America in certain places. Judd, I'm just, when you were talking earlier about the way that they infiltrated, I mean, it's just like we see this happening in other places in the West, peacefully at first. They integrate peacefully. They come in, they ingratiate themselves, they buy politicians, they have families. And then when they have critical mass and power, they flip the switch and the killing starts.
Oh, that's exactly right. I mean, this is Islam 101. This is how they've conquered every civilization since 640 AD. And we shouldn't be surprised. Well, they go in, they move in, they populate, gain population, gain political control, start killing, take over the territory, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And what we're seeing in Nigeria is what's going to happen 50 years from now in England.
Yeah.
Could be 50 years from now in the US if action isn't taken right away.
Yeah, that's right. So Judd, if you were king for a day, you need to be more than a day. But what's the path forward here? If God were to be gracious, if things were to go the way they needed to go to bring peace to Nigeria, to alleviate the suffering and the persecution and the slaughter of the Christians there, to allow them to live peacefully, reclaim their lands, worship freely, what needs to happen? Give us the path forward here.
What needs to happen is the Nigerian government needs to do the function of what a government should do, and that's protect its own citizens. Instead of playing patty cake with the terrorists and, quit being complicit with the killing. Have a heart. So protect your own citizens first and foremost. And if that doesn't happen, there needs to be more action taken to take out the terrorists and take out those supporting the terrorists. Because here's the thing, if Nigeria falls, let's look at it geopolitically, so goes the rest of Africa. Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa with the most amount of natural resources. If that goes, so does the rest of Africa. And we're going to talk about the slaughter of millions if something isn't done. So if I were God for a day, I would take out and kill all the terrorists and bring peace back to that region.
Well, go ahead.
But, I'd also like to see all those people come to know Christ. Repent of their sins, come to know Christ, quit buying into a false religion and come to know Jesus.
Amen.
But
well, before we're done, I want to have you share some stories of faith under fire. If you have
Yeah.
some stories of pastors and Christians who,
Yeah.
things that you've seen that you could only explain by the power of the gospel of Christ, because we know that those things happen even in these tragic circumstances. But, just another practical question I have for you is, does the Nigerian government even have like the resources, the manpower, the armament necessary? If the government said, okay, we're going to deal with the Fulani, we're going to take care of these terrorists, we're going to go after them, we're going to go fight them, defeat them, lock them up. I mean, could they even do it?
With willpower, they could.
Okay.
With willpower, they definitely could. And, it wouldn't take much, because there's a lot of Fulani, right? But there is the hardcore element within the Fulani that are dictating and committing the violence and doing all the insanity. And they are pressuring the other Fulani and taxing them to fund these attacks. They're taxing the other Fulani to fund these attacks. And some of them are getting tired of it, but we also see Fulani come to know Christ through this, because they don't like the brutality and the insanity that they see their Fulani brothers doing. And so there is a way forward in doing this. But like I said, faith under fire and what we see, or what I've seen, one of the things that it just gets me is we support over 320 widows per month. A lot of them are widows of murdered pastors. And they did not give up on God. They didn't give up on Jesus. And in fact, they are so led and convicted that they have forgiven their killers, their husbands' killers.
Wow.
And those that have perpetrated. And they still have a heart to try to share the gospel with other Fulani.
Praise God.
It hasn't given up. I mean, it's the only thing that Christ can do, and the power of Christ can do within you, to give you that kind of grace, give you that kind of mercy for others. And I see that every day in these Nigerian Christians. And then there's a pastor, you might have seen him on viral videos, Pastor Ezekiel. He's a friend of mine in Nigeria, and we support him. This guy has had, as they've tried to kill this guy so many times, and by miraculous reasons he escapes, and he is outspoken, and he goes and helps pastors that have had their churches burned, completely destroyed, and he goes and ministers to them and helps bring them back up to confidence, and disciples them to keep these churches going, to be these lights in darkness. This is real Christianity under threat, and these people have not been shaken in their faith.
That's amazing. So tell us a little bit more about what it's like. What is life like for a Christian in Nigeria? Obviously, we're talking in some ways in an abstract term, with some meat on the bones in terms of like, there's threats, there's violence, but like, is it what would you say? Is it like for 95% of every Christian congregation meeting in Nigeria every Sunday, there is the possibility of, a violent, deadly attack on their church? What is that, Liz? It's just in that middle belt region. So what is sort of the daily rhythm for Nigerian Christians?
So in the middle belt region, it's like I say, specifically, especially in the rural areas, they are getting up, they're putting on their Sunday best, they're going to church and worshiping, even with the threat that their church could get attacked at any minute.
Wow.
And we have pastors that are threatened. If you go to service, you're going to get killed, and they still go out and they preach. And for some reason, like the world likes to say, this is farmer herder clashes. This is bandits. They always come up with these nebulous forms of who's doing the killing. It's radical Islamist Fulani that are doing the killing. And these pastors and Christians are willing to die to hold their ground and to defend their churches.
That's amazing. And do you have any stories of any radical conversions from Fulani Muslims who have come to Christ through this incredible testimony of the perseverance of the saints there, even under persecution?
Very interesting. There's a former terrorist who works with our team. Former terrorist works with our team, and what happened is he was in an attack. He got wounded by one of the village security teams, got shot in the leg with a shotgun. His Fulani brethren kind of left him out to dry.
No honor amongst thieves.
And the Christians in that village, instead of going and killing the guy, they took him to a hospital.
Wow.
They got him treated. They shared the gospel with him, and he converted to Christ. Praise and now God. This particular guy is going. And so when we find somebody like that who converts to Christianity, we put him into a safe house for like 3 months so he can get trained in the scriptures, get trained in the faith, get discipled. And then they have a choice. Do you move further south, get away from the Fulani? Because if you're a Fulani who converts to Christ, they got a big target on your back. Do you go up and witness to fellow Fulani and try to convert them to Christ, or do you move south and be safe? I mean, it's like a choice they make. But after 3 months, they choose that. He chose to go evangelize Fulani. And he is now one of our Fulani missionaries that goes undercover, goes into mosques, worship, goes alongside people and slowly starts conversations and converts other Fulani to Christ. And this was a terrorist that was killing Christians.
That's amazing. What do you want American Christians to know? Obviously, we want them to listen to everything that's going on here, but it's one of those interesting things, Judd, where, and I do it myself because it's true in the terms of the mainstream media. Even as I advertise this, we titled it "Silent Massacre." We say nobody is talking about this. That's half true because you're talking about it. I mean, you were just on with Mike Winger. You've been on a bunch of other shows. You're in Washington. There are other people drawing attention to it, but the main major megaphones and apparatus of media, dissemination in America, they're not talking about it. So what do American Christians and churches need to know in sort of like as tight of a message? And then what can they do to help?
So just to get the talking points correct, 90% of all persecuted Christian deaths worldwide have occurred in Nigeria the last 5 years.
Say that one more time.
90% of all Christian persecution deaths occurred in Nigeria in the last 5 years. Insane. That's deaths. Okay. So want to get that fact straight and get that out there. Our persecuted brothers and sisters need your help. And you can not only pray for them, but also you can take action by donating to equippingthepersecuted.org. Partner with us. We're boots on the ground mission, getting the job done. And we preach the gospel at every good deed that we do. Nothing we do is without the gospel. One of the things I would like to explain to the church is why you haven't heard about this in mainstream media, and William, people have to understand how this works, is in order for a major story to break out of Nigeria, to get into the mainstream media, it comes through the Nigerian government. So the Nigerian government holds a press conference. They pay the journalists to show up, and then the journalists repeat and write down everything the government said, and then that's what gets disseminated. Now, there's an Al Jazeera reporter in Nigeria that reports the Nigerian government talking points, and that's what gets put into the Associated Press, and then the CNN and the rest of mainstream media. So you're getting a sanitized, whitewashed version of the event, and it's always called bandits or herder attacks. They never name who's actually doing the killing because it's filtered through Al Jazeera before it gets to the mainstream media.
Yeah, well, I was realizing I was hearing myself because calling them the Fulani herdsmen, even in this conversation with you. So thank you for not knocking me over the head for that. But that's not how we should refer to them, right? They're the Fulani terrorists, the Fulani jihadists.
Well, we coined the term Fulani ethnic militia.
Fulani ethnic militia. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so folks, make sure to check out Equipping the Persecuted. It's just equippingthepersecuted.org. You can give to them right there. There's a contribute site. We'll put the link in as well. Visit Truth Nigeria as well to get, up-to-date information there. I'm looking at it again, Judd. I have it up here in the background. And, one of the stories that jumped out to me was faith leaders accused Nigerian government of fueling religious violence. So it does seem like is there a
Yeah.
contingency of Christian faith leaders in Nigeria who are trying to speak up for their own people?
There are more and more coming out, but there's also faith leaders that are being paid to try to counteract their narrative. So it gives the Nigerian government and even Democrats here in the United States saying, well, such and such faith leader said it wasn't happening. They're all on the take, but the guys, the boots on the ground pastors are speaking up. They're speaking up and they're doing it at their own risk. And even they get punished by their denominations for speaking up. Sounds familiar, huh?
Yeah, sure. Right. Well, Judd, actually, you got to bring, have you brought Nigerian pastors over to the United States to talk about this, to go around and talk to congregations?
We are working on it. We're working on it. It's been very, very hard to get visas, especially for people speaking up against persecution in Nigeria. They always get their visas denied. And we have a lot of deep state people that are in our embassy that are leftist leaning that haven't gotten the memo yet. And I'm praying that changes up in the State Department.
Who are the Nigerian champions here in America? Other than you, do we have some of the diaspora? Do we have Christian Nigerian congregations in America, or like, is there a leader here? Because I mean, I was just thinking, Judd, like we've got to, I tried to submit a resolution at the Southern Baptist Convention this last year on the persecution of Christians in Armenia. And I'm telling you right now that I will work with me on it, Judd. We will submit one on Nigeria
Amen.
for this year in Orlando. Let's get it done. Whoever's going to chair that resolutions committee, if you're listening to this, you better not block that resolution. Southern Baptists are the champions of religious liberty in the United States of America. And I'm not seeing many other Southern Baptists talk about this. That's why I was so interested in having you on here, because at Center for Baptist Leadership, we want to inform Southern Baptists about issues like these. And so we got to get you to the annual meeting in Orlando with, a contingency of either diaspora Nigerians here in America who are speaking out on this, or if you can get somebody over here. But are there other people that other folks should be aware of or following on this issue?
As far as diaspora in the U.S., no, the main pastors that are speaking up against us haven't been allowed into the U.S. from Nigeria. So there's Nigerian pastors, and I'm working at getting them in. And now that the CPC designation has happened, we've gained some connections in the State Department. Hopefully in the next few months, we'll be having some of these guys in the U.S. from Nigeria speaking out. We've had a lot of Catholics speak out against it that have been here, Catholic priests. But frankly, we need more Protestants speaking out against this.
What is the religious demographics there in Nigeria in terms of Protestants, Catholics, charismatics? I don't know if there's some of those. What's the breakdown?
The vast majority, it's a hodgepodge, just like it is in the U.S. The Catholics actually hold a minority. They're like 20% Catholic in Nigeria, and the rest is 80% Protestant. But I mean, you have Baptist, you have Anglican, you have Pentecostal. You have a whole slew of different denominations. But unfortunately, and a thing that we are fighting theologically in Nigeria is the massive spread of hyper prosperity gospel. And we have been working on trying to correct some of that bad theology there as well, because they do not stand up for their brothers and sisters in Christ. You see very few of them speaking up. And some of the largest churches in the world of the hyper prosperity gospel are in Nigeria, and they don't stand. So we're doing our best to correct that and to work with pastors and get them some better theology.
Great. Well, thank you for that too, John. So we've been going about 55 minutes here with our breaks in and out. We'll wrap up shortly, but if you could, look, I know you're a thoughtful brother. You do a lot of other things too. Obviously, people might know you from your documentary "Enemies Within the Church," which was so well received by all of our Southern Baptist friends, of course. But what would you say in terms about like the meta narrative? Because I think this issue here really strikes at Southern Baptists in particular, and Americans who value religious liberty, which we should value rightly ordered religious liberty that it does not turn blind eyes to threats posed by what are essentially violent religious, backwater fascist theocracies, which is what Islam really is. What would be your message to American Christians and Southern Baptists as we see what's happening in Nigeria, as we consider Christianity and religious freedom in the United States?
We need to be engaged. We need to be all hands on deck. We need to be standing up and speaking out and addressing threats to our religious freedom, our religious liberty in the U.S. And we need to be banding together on this. There are some of, there could be theological differences in different camps, but we need to be joining together on this, especially in standing up in the fight of Islam and creeping up in the U.S. I don't know if you know this, but there's a fact that I just read that the number of witches and neo-pagans has increased tenfold over the last 10 years in the U.S.
Wow.
It went from 100,000 10 years ago to over 1.5 million. So we need to be standing up and taking ground and doing our part here.
Great. Judd, I know you have to go.
Yep.
Thank you so much for joining us. Folks, make sure to follow Judd online, check out Equipping the Persecuted, give to his organization. Judd, if they want to reach you directly, how could they do that?
Equippingthepersecuted.org. If you want to email me, please, no strange questions. Judd at equippingthepersecuted.org. I cannot arm Nigerians. Quit asking me to send them guns. Can't do that. Other than that, you can reach me at Judd at equippingthepersecuted.org.
Thank you for joining us, Judd. May God bless your ministry, and may God be with the Nigerian people.
God bless you. Thank you for having me on, William.
Thanks. Judd, you can drop. I'm going to keep going here just for a second because I know you got to go. Thanks. All right. Well, Judd had to go. Obviously, we had some technical difficulties here and there. If you've stayed through the stream, don't leave just yet because I want to mention a couple other things here while I'm live and you're listening and we're recording. And so again, make sure to check out Judd. This is and Equipping the Persecuted. This is so important. And I regret how some of the technical difficulties maybe chopped up the conversation. But this is such an important issue for American Christians. If you've listened to me or you follow me online, you know that I am no advocate for foreign adventurism. I'm not advocating for boots on the ground in Nigeria, but my comment about gunboat diplomacy was not entirely tongue in cheek. There are certainly potentially limited actions we could take, of course, under the right authorizations and approvals and all those sorts of things. We don't need to get into that to help alleviate the suffering of our brothers and sisters in Christ in Nigeria. But what Judd just said there was truly astounding. It's blood chilling that 90% of all Christian deaths due to religious persecution have been coming out of Nigeria for the last many years now. And there is only one religion that is responsible for this. It is not a nameless religion. It is not tribal violence. It is not, as he was saying, herders or, border bandits. It's Islamists. It's people who follow the Prophet Muhammad and think that Allah is God and that they have a divine right to conquer and enslave everybody who doesn't believe in their religion. And furthermore, they're empowered by their sacred texts to use all sorts of subterfuge, lies, and other underhanded ways to gain power in societies until they have enough power to turn around and use the sword. There are other threats to the West. I'm not denying that. Obviously, liberalism is a major threat. Liberalism, wokeness, progressivism, globalism, whatever you want to call it, the left will ultimately be nothing more than a handmaiden to violent Islamic rule in Western societies. This is a conflict that has been going on for centuries. Islam is a religion of conquest. And if you look over the historical record, when it's powerful, it pushes out. When it's weaker, it retracts. And the Islamists have been given this incredible boon in our collective Western ignorance and suicidal empathy And the fact that they're not having to conquer Western countries through the sword, but they're being welcomed in by third world migration. We are opening our borders to these people who will ultimately kill us because we don't worship their false god. And it's happening in Germany, it's happening in France, it's happening in the UK, it's happening in other European countries. And it will happen here in America if it's not already happening. And I'm sure it is in certain ways that are not being reported. Just yesterday, I saw a video of this guy who is running for mayor in Minneapolis. I can't even remember how to pronounce his name, but you know who I'm talking about. This Somalian guy at his political rally for the mayor, the highest executive position in a major city in America, in Minneapolis, was speaking in Somalian and waving a Somalian flag with the colors of the Somalian flag all around him and one obscure small American flag in the background. And we're just supposed to be okay with this. We as Christians are just supposed to say, well, this is what the First Amendment grants everybody in America, so there's nothing we can do about it. I hope they're friendly Muslims. This is ridiculous. Our forefathers would laugh at us. Our Baptist, Presbyterian, Lutheran, Anglican forefathers would laugh at us to think that this is what we are allowing under the guise of religious pluralism here in the United States of America. They wouldn't just laugh at us, they would rebuke us for allowing our lands to be conquered by a violent religious ideology that is intent on enslaving us or killing us. Because just like the left, Islam gives you two options. You can serve in dimitude and silence, or you can be slaughtered. And that's exactly what's happening in Nigeria. And we would be so foolish to ever assume that it could not happen here in the United States of America. And so let this be a wake-up call. This conversation I've had with Judd today, let Donald Trump's statement be a wake-up call. I am so thankful for that. I'm so thankful to see President Trump saying that we are going to protect Christians globally. I'm going to go back to his wording here again because I thought it was so good, where he said, we stand ready, willing, and able to save our great Christian population around the world. Now, that's interesting. That's interesting language and phrasing there. Donald Trump says our Christian population. I think that expresses solidarity in the idea that America is fundamentally a Christian nation, at least a once and future Christian nation, as is my prayer and our work and our hope at Center for Baptist Leadership and the other organizations that I'm a part of. Americans should rightly feel a solidarity with Christians around the globe, and the United States of America should be a global champion for religious liberty and freedom, particularly for Christians. Yes, other religions, other practitioners need religious freedom too, but Christians in particular are persecuted in other countries. I mean, look at what's happening in India. If you have any missionary friends working in India, ask them about the rise of aggressive Hindu nationalism over there and how they're being treated right now in India. I mean, it's happening everywhere. And never forget that the idea of religious liberty, which has mutated into this, disgusting mess of what we call religious pluralism, is fundamentally a Christian belief. There are not other nations in the world. This is unique to Western Christendom, that we're going to try to have a society where people of different religious beliefs and backgrounds can practice them freely and openly together in peace. This is unique because of Christendom, but it cannot be limitless. It cannot be totally unbounded. It cannot be undertaken without a regard to truth and reality in the natural law. And when we don't do that, we get places like Nigeria. The Nigerian Constitution is really, I said the other day, it's a Baptist's dream constitution, because in the Nigerian Constitution, I believe it's Article 10, it's just one line. It forbids both the federal government and the states there from having any sort of official religion. Has that neutrality, has that disestablishment helped them thrive? Absolutely not. Now, that's not an argument for establishment. But my point here is we can't just close our eyes blindly and say separation of church and state and everything is going to work out. No, we have to have eyes wide open, particularly when we're dealing with violent, dangerous belief systems like Islam, and treat them accordingly. Islam is not just like every other religion out there. And yes, we have a history and a track record here in the Southern Baptist Convention of some of our leading ethicists and the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission joining in defending building of mosques. Maybe we should rethink that. Maybe our Baptist forefathers never would have imagined that our commitment to Baptist religious liberty would have morphed into something like this. Much more could be said here, but I'm riled up from listening to Judd. And again, it doesn't take, we don't have to have prescient foresight to see what's coming down the line here. God calls us to use wisdom, to live wisely in the world that he's created, to be able to spot things and recognize threats. Islam is one of the greatest threats to Western civilization ever, period, in various cycles. And it is on the rise again today, coming in through mass migration into the West and conquering in failed states like Nigeria. And so we as American Christians, we need to have the courage to stand up against it. Stop pretending like it's just some other world religion of peace. It's not. Your suicidal empathy is going to get your children killed. So let's not go down that road. Make sure to check out Equipping the Persecuted, follow Judd, like, subscribe, and follow to us at the Center for Baptist Leadership on all major podcast platforms. And if you appreciate the work that we're doing, give to Equipping the Persecuted. But if you're a church that wants to partner with us, we could certainly use it. As many of you might have seen, Willie Rice announced today that he's going to run for president in Orlando in 2026. And we're going to be doing everything we can to help drive turnout to that convention, to help make sure that the Southern Baptist Convention, the largest Protestant denomination in America, gets back on better footing, both for the good of our neighbors, for the future of our country, and for the future of the West, which hangs in the balance. Thanks for tuning in today, folks. I hope you guys all have a great weekend and happy Reformation Day. Let me play our closing music. I always forget I have to do that. And then I'll be out of here. God bless.
The Center for Baptist Leadership podcast is powered by American Reformer, hosted by William Wolfe, with audio production by Jared Cummings. Our music is a custom remix of Soldiers of Christ in Truth Arrayed, the official hymn of Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. To help CBL reform and revitalize Christian institutions, please consider making a generous donation today at centerforbaptistleadership.org.